Today's date is the 26th of February 2014. My name is Ben Fielden, and this interview is for Ming-ai London Institute, British Chinese Workforce Heritage Project. Can I begin by asking your name?
Stanley Hui.
And whereabouts were you born?
In Hong Kong.
And can you tell me a little bit about your family?
I was brought up in a single family, single parent family. My mother brought up myself and 4 siblings, so the 5 of us. I was the youngest, and we were dependent on remittance from my father, so we were quite poor when we were young, and later on my sisters came out to work to support the family, and then it went better and better, and both my brother and myself went to university in Hong Kong.
And what work did your parents do?
My father was a businessman. He went to Malaysia 3 months before I was born, and then he had families over there in Malaysia, so there's just not much he could send back home. And my mother took a lot of jobs and work from home, we children also helped out in order to make some money.
And what education do you have?
I had my first degree in Hong Kong in psychology, and then I had postgraduate education diploma from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I came here and I got an MBA, Master of Business Administration, from the University of East London.
And how were you able to come to the UK?
I was on a scholarship to do a research at the University of College London, 3 years project.
And when was it that you came?
I came in 1988 for 3 years or so, and then I found a job after that in Birmingham, a full-time job as centre manager for the Chinese Community Centre in Birmingham.
And how was the community centre there?
It was quite flourishing, and a lot of activities, and elderly people, women, middle-aged men, they all came to the centre for advice, support, and the activities there.
And when you say it was, do you mean?
Well, I worked 4 years over there, and then I left Birmingham back to London to take up another studentship at University of Greenwich, doing a research in education, studying the identification or identity of young Chinese born and brought up in Britain.
When did you first get involved with something in Haringey?
Very soon after I arrived in this country, so I think it was beginning of 1989. I was offered, because I used to be a teacher in Hong Kong, and they asked me to teach at their Chinese school. So I did, and it was every Saturday, and as a volunteer, but they do pay quite good travelling expenses.
And can you remember what your first impressions of Haringey were?
I first went to the school base where the Saturday school was run. It was a local primary school, quite old building, Victorian kind of building, and I found it's not really appealing, but the head teacher and also the other teaching staff and parents were all very enthusiastic, and it was really good fun to meet, to teach young children and teenagers to learn their mother tongue. And it was only later on I went to the centre in Langham Road, and I found it small but quite highly used, even though it was weekend, Saturdays, and they run some classes there, and also there were activities for women and families.
So it sounds like with both these in Haringey, they weren't maybe the most glamorous of places, but they were quite thriving.
Well, it's very conveniently located next to the Turnpike Link station, so easy to get to. It's a small place, so it limits what sort of things they can run. And I remember anytime they organize festival celebrations or bigger events, they will have to hire a venue from the council to run it.
And just before we start talking about your involvement with Haringey, I just want to ask you about what you're currently doing. So what is your current job?
I'm currently a care worker working with people with dementia, and I take care of them at their own home, and it's a full-time job.
And how did you get involved in that?
In year 2007, I decided to give up my work at my last organization, HAFCO, because I wanted to remember my mother who had died at that time for about 10 years, so it's 10th anniversary of her death. And I wanted to write a book about her, so I gave her my job. But eventually I didn't write a book, and 1 year on I was involved. I involved myself in a elderly centre, Peel Institute. It is a day centre for older people locally, just 10 minutes walk from here. So I was a volunteer there, and I found myself very interested in elderly work. And the centre manager just recommended that I should work in this field, and there was an opportunity available in London Care, which is a care agency. They were recruiting carers, so I went for it, and they employed me, gave me training, and then assigned me to different service users. And that's how I started, and it was some 3-4 years ago.
And how do you find it? Do you enjoy the job?
Oh yes, I enjoyed it very much. The working condition now is very good. I only take care of one service user for 35 hours a week, over 6 days a week. And it's not so much traveling, but when I first started, the working condition was really demeaning and unfavorable, because I was assigned 7 or 8 service users, and I have to travel in between and rush from one place to another in order to be there in time. And also the traveling is in my own time, so it doesn't count as working hours. But having said that, I still enjoyed working with different people with different needs. There were some people with diabetes, or some people who are paralyzed and couldn't walk. There were people with not learning disability, but who are unable to take care of themselves. So I did different things, all sorts of things in terms of personal care and social care for them, and I always enjoyed it. It gives me great satisfaction every time when I leave one person and they said to me, thank you, and I could see that I made a big difference to their lives. Although I feel sorry that they had to depend on carers to take care of them, but being able to offer some help to them gives me a lot of satisfaction. And now my working condition has improved. I only work for one service user who has got dementia. It's easier job. I don't need to travel or commute that much, but it hasn't been able to give me the satisfaction of hearing a thank you or whatever. He has got dysphasia. He can't talk, so he can't communicate in that sense. But his family, his wife and his daughter, all are very appreciative of the help that I'm giving. So I do get some feedback, positive feedback from them, and it's rewarding as well.
And who is it that you're employed by?
London Care. There are two major care providers in this area of London. There is London Care and there is also the Care UK. But I didn't approach Care UK.
And is there any sort of, I know some, for example, Chinese community centres have specific caring services or befriending services for the Chinese community. Have you come across anything similar?
When I was looking for a job, I wasn't really looking for a job, but only on the recommendation of the day centre manager, then I applied for a job. But after I've worked for London Care, then I became aware of other Chinese centres starting this sort of service, because I think the outsourcing and commissioning of care service has been just under 10 years. So some Chinese community centres are quite slow in picking up this trend and get contracts in order to become care providing organizations.
So part of the reason, just to make sure I'm hearing right, part of the reason that some centres are starting to pick that up is because it's being outsourced from the council, picked up by private.
Before the council or the care service was outsourced, it was provided by councils. They employ care workers to do home care or care services.
And so now I'm just going to go into your previous jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So what led to your decision to work at Haringey Community Centre?
I worked there as a volunteer. I was never employed by Haringey Chinese Community Centre. As I said, I started teaching the mother tongue classes, and then I got to know the management committee through, they first invited me to be the compare for the Chinese New Year celebrations. So I did that and then got to know the management committee, and later on they invited me to be the head teacher of the Chinese school. I did that for 2 years, and at the same time I became one of the management committee members. I was the company secretary for 1 year, I think.
So with the company secretary, is that still a voluntary?
Still on a voluntary basis, yeah.
And so how much time were you sort of giving to the community centre?
Well, I was studying at that time, so I was quite flexible. in terms of my involvement with the Chinese Community Centre. There were some points when there were some issues to be discussed and deal with, then it will involve more time. Otherwise, I would say about 2-3 hours a week.
And how did it compare between Birmingham and Haringey?
Haringey is very localized within the London Borough of Haringey, and Birmingham covers a much wider catchment area. Service users or members do come from outside Birmingham as well, in West Midlands. So size-wise, I think Birmingham was bigger, and it has more involvement with the Birmingham Council as well. So my job changed a lot when I went to Birmingham. The Chinese Community Centre as their manager. I had to represent the centre and had meetings with council officers and to meet the funders and negotiate funding, as well as coordinate different staff members and volunteers in order to provide a full range of community services. But in terms of services, there are a lot of similarities between Haringey and Birmingham, because the Chinese community, no matter where they are, their needs are quite similar, and in order to meet the needs, then similar services are provided.
And so when you were volunteering with Haringey, what was it you were doing?
When I was volunteering in Haringey, I was mainly involved in the setup of the company and its statutory responsibility of producing their annual accounts and annual report, holding their AGM. But I wasn't involved in running any services other than the Saturday mother tongue classes.
When you were involved, have you been back recently, and can you see any changes that might have occurred in the centre?
Yes, I was invited back there to have a look when they have finished the refurbishment and extension of the centre, and it was I think it was 2 years ago, so 2011, I think. And at that time they were recruiting, they were trying to employ a part-time, I think, volunteer coordinator, and they were quite interested in encouraging me to apply for it. So I went to the centre, have a look, and it gives me a very good impression. The extension was done by designed by an architect who is a management committee member, a trustee. So and it made very good use of the limited space, and at the same time he kept in mind the need for sunlight into the the ground floor level. So I was really impressed, and I'm sure with the extension and the new refurbishment, then they can run more different kinds of activities, and the day center that they are running for elderly people will be much better.
And do you think the role of a Chinese community centre in Haringey is important for serving the Chinese residents in Haringey?
Well, I think the Haringey Chinese Community Centre is crucial for the Chinese community in Haringey to settle down there, because a lot of Chinese people living in that area, they can't really access other support services because of their language differences. They can't understand much English, and they have to rely on interpreting service available at the community centre. And I think the Chinese Community Centre in Haringey was also an impetus for new settlers, new Chinese settlers in London, not just in Haringey, but all over London. At that time, I think it was 1999 or 97 actually. 96, no, I'm wrong, 1989, when I was first involved. The chair lady at that time, Bing Sum Lau, she was very active in, there was a democratic demonstration in Tiananmen Square in Beijing, and afterwards a lot of refugees or people seeking asylum came from Beijing, and she, together with her lawyer husband, provide a lot of support for the newcomers from Beijing or from Hong Kong after the Tiananmen Square incident to seek asylum in London. And I wasn't involved in any of that, but I knew that ever since then there were more Chinese children coming to the Chinese school from China. And at first we mainly taught Cantonese as a mother tongue to the Chinese school pupils. But later on, because of the change in the community, more and more Mandarin speakers came to the Chinese school. That's how I think we started to run some Mandarin classes as well.
And with Haringey Community Centre, because it is quite specific to Haringey, unlike some others that have more of a wider remit, do you think that changes and reflects the people who go to it? I mean, they have to be Haringey residents. Do you think it creates a more local character to it?
I think given in London we've got, over 10 Chinese community organizations in different London boroughs, and each should focus on meeting the needs of their local borough. But in North London, in Haringey, I think it is quite strategically located to provide services for Chinese living in Haringey, as well as those just outside but who may not be able to benefit from other Chinese community centres, because I think other than Haringey there is Barnet Chinese Community Centre, which provide more limited services for Chinese community there. Otherwise, there's also Islington and then Camden, but they are a little bit more central to central London. And people from Brent or from Enfield, from that area outside Haringey, I think it will be essential that they can take up the services in Haringey Chinese Community Centre.
And so you were invited to become the head teacher at the school. What were the main duties that you undertook in this role?
Well, as the head teacher, I had to manage the volunteer teachers. I ran some staff meetings and make sure the hiring of the renting of the venue. At that time, there was a change in the funding situation of the council. They no longer provide free venue, and we had to approach the local schools in order to find out their renting conditions and get a license to use their school for Saturday. I spent a lot of time doing that, and eventually we found, is it Downhill School, or I've forgotten the name, but it's at the end of Langham Road, the other end. Yeah. And also at that time, the Hong Kong government office was going to finish its funding or sponsoring of Chinese schools in London or in the UK. And they set up a Chinese teaching material forum, and I became a member of that national forum to discuss the curriculum for Chinese language teaching in the UK, and how to match up with the GCSE level and the A level, and develop our own teaching material for different levels for the pupils.
And so is the school run on a voluntary basis, like the teachers are voluntary staff, they're not paid?
Well, I think there is a issue that Haringey Chinese Community Centre became aware of subsequent to I left. I mean, after I left. When I was there, they were paying a nominal fee to the teachers, like £10 or £20 for 2 hours or whatever. They weren't aware of the fact that they are paying fees or money to the staff there. Then they are employing those part-time teachers. So they were actually an employer, and they have responsibility for PAYE or NI contribution, that sort of thing. So later on, when I became the capacity building officer in Haringey and helped the Chinese Community Centre, then I raised awareness of this issue with the management committee, and I don't know what decision they eventually take, and I can't speak for them on that issue now.
So can you tell me a little bit about the history of the school, like when it was founded?
Honestly, I didn't really look into a lot of their history, but I think it wasn't for a very long time when I first started teaching there. I think it was only set up maybe 2-3 years before I went there and teach. So we were talking about maybe year 1986 when it started, but maybe I'm wrong because I didn't really go into the exact history of how it was set up.
And so was the aim of it to kind of spread Cantonese and Mandarin?
Yes, it's started because some Chinese parents would like their children to be able to communicate with them in their mother tongue at home. So the classes were run mainly to teach them how to speak and listen to Cantonese. Although the curriculum, they used some Chinese Hong Kong textbooks provided by the Hong Kong Government Office before we had our own teaching materials developed here in this country. And pupils weren't really interested in the textbooks because they were not relevant to their living in the UK, and they were of a level that is too high, and they focus on repeating the passages, reciting them, and focus on writing some difficult words rather than really encourage them to use and learn the language in their daily life. So I think the setup of the National Forum for developing teaching material was very good in order to encourage pupils to have interest in what they are learning in the classes.
And so is the material from the National Forum, is that used today in the school, and is it used more widely in other Chinese schools?
Oh yes. They were supposed to be used in all the Chinese schools in the UK. Yeah, they are used also in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Yeah.
And how many students did the school attract?
In Haringey, when I was there, I think there were about 300, 400 pupils. We had about 10 classes and with about 30 pupils each class. And the demand was very big, and as I said, at that time there were newcomers from China as well as those who had been settled from Hong Kong.
Is there any demand for the Chinese language outside of the Chinese community?
Not much at that time. I think the Chinese children they didn't really feel linked to Chinese language or Cantonese or Chinese culture very much. At school, they were discouraged from learning Cantonese. If they wanted to learn a modern language, then they were encouraged to learn French or other European languages rather than Cantonese. But now it's quite different. I think when I left teaching, I noticed that more and more of the Chinese children, Chinese pupils, found it very interesting to learn Cantonese because there was karaoke. It became very popular, and they like singing Cantonese songs, so they want to learn to read some words so they can do very well with karaoke. And while Chinese films from Hong Kong, videos were widely available, and then there was availability of satellite TV, television channel where they could watch Chinese programs. So I think from then on, they were more interested in learning the language, and they found it more relevant to them.
Do you think it's important that the Chinese languages are taught still continue to be taught in Haringey?
Yes, I think it is very important to carry on this piece of work, and I know that they do relate the teaching or the learning to public examinations to go for the GCSE and A level, and it is important for those who choose to go for the exams to continue to take lessons from the Chinese Community Centre. I know that some colleges and some mainstream schools also offer Chinese language classes. But I think coming to the Chinese Community Centre on a weekend and continue to learn the language is more effective for them to learn the language rather than just learn it at their own school or college. By the way, I also taught GCSE Chinese language at Kingsway College, which is just now is called SOAS in Vernon Square. It's an annex, not in the campus area. But I taught for 1 year, and I had about 10 pupils coming from, is it Southgate, North London, and they had to come down after school to take the classes from me in is it Islington? Yeah, yeah. I think some colleges do provide Chinese language classes, but they are not the same, and I could see that the motivation of the students coming to class of that sort will be quite different from when they go to the Chinese Centre on Saturday for the courses.
So when you were at Kingsway
Yeah.
College, that was a GCSE program, but it was taught outside of school hours?
Yes, and I think the schools bought those courses from the course from the college.
And so from what you've seen, is it, I mean, are there any non-Chinese people learning Cantonese or Mandarin?
Well, I know what some people who are some English people or non-Chinese, we say, who are interested in learning the language. But through my contact, their interests were mainly just to be able to say a few words, so it's not really serious. But I also came across some people, non-Chinese, who learned Chinese and they could speak very good Cantonese or Mandarin, and they use it in their work as well. I knew some lawyers who were involved in international law, and they found it very useful to learn Chinese. Some financial people, financiers, who have dealings with Hong Kong or China, yeah, and they learn the language and find it useful.
And how is the Chinese school funded?
At that time, it wasn't funded at all, so it had to depend on the school fees that they collected from the pupils or their parents.
And what reason did you leave?
I left in 1991 because I got a full-time job in Birmingham, so I had to stop my contacts with Haringey.
So now I'm going to go on to talk about your involvement with HAVCO, which is the Haringey Association of Voluntary and Community Organisations. So when did you become involved with HAVCO?
I think it was year 2003 when I finished my contract with being a capacity building officer, and I just became aware of an advertisement for chief executive for HAVCO, and I applied, and I was surprised I got it, but maybe it's because of my graduation from the UEL MBA course, which is focusing on voluntary and community sector management, and also my experience with Haringey Chinese Community Centre. I've lived in Tottenham. All those things together, made me a suitable applicant. And also they tried to recruit the chief executive for some time, and they couldn't appoint someone, so that post was vacant for a long time, and it was managed by a consultant at that time. And then when I was employed, I was the first chief executive, and there were a lot of controversy over the relations of different racial groups, ethnic groups in Haringey, and also different sectors or different organizations within the voluntary sector in Haringey. So I think coming from outside of Haringey, that makes me more suitable. So I'm not part of their issues. So I was there to really give them a fresh start.
What was it that led you to become involved? What was it that interested you about that role?
Well, I think it was more or less a career development for me. After spending 2 years to study for the management of voluntary organizations, and spent 5 years running a national umbrella body for the community in the UK, Chinese community in the UK. I think HAFCO could give me a more local focus, and also run a new organization. Then I can design its development. So I took up the challenge.
And can you explain a little bit about the background of HAFCO?
Well, HAFCO is an umbrella organization for Haringey's voluntary and community sector. Before HAFCO, there used to be another organization run as a CVS, Council of Voluntary Service for Haringey, but it ran into a lot of problems with its working relationship with the council totally broke down, and I think there were accusations that it favors some communities over other communities. So that was disbanded, and then a consultant was involved in consulting all the stakeholders, and then set up a steering group to set up HAFCO. But having everything set up, they couldn't recruit a suitable chief executive, and that's when I came in. When I came in, I think the governing document and the basic structure of HAFCO was already set up, so I just took it from there.
And how is HAFCO funded?
It was core funded by Haringey Council. So the funding from Haringey Council enables HAFCO to pay for the salary of the chief executive, as well as another member of staff, and the renting of an office and running of some of its activities. Not a lot, but it really is like sitcom funding. Then when I took up my role as chief executive, a lot of my time was spent on fundraising and funding application for projects. So I got funding for different projects which are relevant to the remit of HEFCO.
Can you talk a little bit about what those projects were?
Oh, it's been so many years, so my memory may not really enable me to give a very accurate and precise description of the projects I started in HEFCO, but I can remember some projects like setting up community learning programs, that is to provide training and learning opportunity for the voluntary sector organizations, staff or volunteers, and we ran a forum for them to discuss their learning needs, and we got some European funding to run a program of community learning. I got funding to run ICT program, that is to provide ICT, information and communication technology support to voluntary community organizations with their hardware, with their software, with running of their computer system, so as to speak. And also I got funding for volunteering program, so we set up some proper procedures and policies for voluntary community organizations in Haringey that they can use when they want to recruit and involve volunteers, and they adopt some good practices of recruiting and using involving volunteers. We also got funding to run publish and set up a database to collect information about the voluntary and community organizations in Haringey, the services they provide and the contacts and so forth, and we put it into a directory and also make it available for in our website, so people can search for certain organizations services, then they come up with organizations and they know the contact point, so it helps to raise the profile of voluntary and community organizations in Haringey. But I think a large chunk of HEFCO's development went into the setting up of a representation framework for the voluntary organizations, the whole sector, in these local strategic partnership. There's Haringey Strategic Partnership, which comprise of the Haringey Council, the Teaching PCT Primary Care Trust, the health sector in Haringey, the fire service, the police in Haringey, as well as some private sector organizations. It's very important for the running and organizing of services in Haringey, and the voluntary sector usually has no say or no involvement, very limited involvement in the planning and management or commissioning of services. And HEFCO, I helped to set up a framework where voluntary and community organizations can elect their representatives to attend those meetings, and with funding, then we can facilitate the involvement of voluntary sector in more effectively in influencing strategic policies and strategy. that's a lot of work because, I was in the core executive committee, and it had a lot of meetings. And then underneath there were 6 different partnerships focusing on well-being of adults and then children, and then there was one on I've forgotten, economic development, and there are some others. So each have lots of meetings and lots of paperwork and lots of policies to discuss. So any representatives coming from the voluntary sector need to be able to digest and learn about public policies, and also after attending those meetings they need a framework where they can feedback what are being discussed at the strategic partnership to the voluntary sector. So we run some forums in those themes for the voluntary sector to get feedback from those representatives and then discuss some of the issues. Yeah.
So was there a lot of involvement from voluntary groups in?
Yes, there were, and they understood the importance of being involved and getting information and being represented in those strategic partnership meetings. But voluntary and community organizations are very under-resourced, so they don't really have the capacity to be involved in those meetings, and also the seats are very limited in those partnerships. You can only have up to 2 places from the voluntary sector in each board. So HAVCO takes a very important role in enabling a democratic election of representatives from the voluntary and community organizations to sit on those boards and ensure that they feedback information to other organizations who may not be able to go to those meetings.
And so in this role, I imagine you had quite a lot of interaction with people from different community groups.
Yeah.
So I mean, is there a lot of those groups working together in Haringey? Would you say they work quite well together, or?
Well, actively we involved about 100 organizations in Haringey, and that's quite a large number. And some are more actively involved than the others. So on a regular basis, we involved over 30 voluntary organizations anytime in HAVCO.
How many of those would be Chinese ones?
Well, the only Chinese organizations in Haringey involved are Haringey Chinese Community Centre, which also includes the community school, and Ming-ai Institute, and no other Chinese organizations than those 2.
And would you say it's a good way for Chinese organizations to get their voice heard?
Yes. Well, I think the Chinese Community Centre benefited mainly from the capacity building of HAVCO, and at that time there was certain issues, and my staff helped to really intervene and help Chinese Community Centre to deal with the issues that they were confronted with.
What do you think could be done to further integrate and get these different groups working together?
Well, in my opinion, Chinese organizations need to, even though they may lack the capacity, but it's essential that they are involved with other organizations, either locally or regionally, covering the whole of London, or even nationally, with the Chinese in Britain Forum. Mm-hmm.
Now I'll move on to that in a second. But what was your reason for leaving HAVCO?
Well, it's an opportunity that I got from another organization called SEMFO. They were funded by the Home Office to appoint 15 capacity building officers at one go from different communities, Chinese, Indian or Asian, Pakistani and Muslim, African communities. And I applied for it because it offered a very good package in terms of career development. And as part of the program, then I was given a studentship or scholarship for 1 year to do a full-time MBA course with the voluntary sector management pathway. And then after that, then will be capacity building, I've forgotten, 10 organizations each year for 4 years. So with good salary, and also at that time I was allowed to continue my work in in Chinese in Britain Forum. So I signed myself up and I got accepted, thinking that I could actually continue after doing the study. I could still go back to Chinese in Britain Forum with my old role, but eventually there was certain issues about the contract, and at that time the best way to resolve it was for me to leave Chinese in Britain Forum, and then the contract issue would be resolved, and they allowed me to go to HAVCO to continue as part of the SEMFO program.
So moving on to the China in Britain Forum.
Mm-hmm.
How was it that you got involved in that?
It was also very opportunist. I just learned about the opportunity by chance. I was doing my research at University of Greenwich, and then I saw an advertisement and I applied for it and I got it. The Chinese in Britain Forum was set up after a consultation, national consultation about the needs of the Chinese community in the UK, and in response to some green paper or white paper. Then there was a steering group to set up the Chinese in Britain Forum, and then I applied and I got it as the first executive director for Chinese in Britain Forum. So,
what year was that in? Sorry.
Pardon?
What year was that in?
That was 1998 or 99. Yeah. Maybe the end of 1998.
And what is the main aims of the forum?
Well, the main aims was to form a network and provide liaison among the voluntary and community organizations of the Chinese community in Britain. That covers, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, and it didn't cover Scotland, I think. Yes, we cover Scotland as well. So we should say the UK, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And practically, what would the forum do?
There is just so little you can do with very limited resources. When I started, I was the only employee. And when I left, I think there were 4 or 5 members of staff. So I developed it from one-man organization to 5 within 5 years. Yeah. So the first thing I did was to set up the publicity to inform all the voluntary and community organizations in Chinese organizations in the UK about this new organization, what we are about, and invite them to join as members. And then I had a very high caliber board of trustees. So I registered the organization as a company limited by guarantee, and then they became trustees. And I ran different focus groups or seminars in different regions, in Yorkshire, in Manchester, in Birmingham, in elsewhere, to really get to know better the regional local organizations, involve them, and my board of trustees will, depends on their availability, then they'll come and run the seminars, and people find it very useful because they got to know some of the famous Chinese people who are on my board. Yeah, so there was Professor Chan, who was Lord Chan later on, the only Chinese lord in the House of Lords at that time. And there was Thomas Chan, who was very active in the politics of the UK, mainly London, and and then I also focus on providing or publishing newsletters on a monthly basis, and then provide some funding information, so Chinese organizations will know where to get funding, and then started to run a series of training courses, and then organize 2 years on, then I organized the first national conference for the Chinese community in UK. It was quite good. So about 200 delegates coming from different parts of the country came to London. We had a very good day of discussions. Yeah.
I imagine with all this work you've got to know the Chinese community across Britain fairly well.
Yes.
You've got a good understanding. So how does the experience in London compare to maybe outside of London?
Well, in London, I think we have different local Chinese organizations, and they sometimes compete with each other or against each other for membership or for service users and for funding as well. But eventually, with Chinese in Britain Forum, we help to set up a Chinese community network. We call it LCCN, London Chinese Community Network, to provide, an opportunity for these Chinese organizations in London to come together and then set their agenda and find a way of working together. I think it ran pretty well. But don't ask me how they went after I left in year 2003. So I didn't really get involved anymore. Compared to London organizations, those Chinese organizations outside, they are one-stop shop for the local community or the county council area, because there are not any other organizations who can do other things. So and the people, the volunteers or the management committee, they are mainly people from the catering businesses, having their restaurants or Chinese takeaways. So they are quite busy in their own job, so they can't spend a lot of time to be involved in the community organization, and their training and mentality is quite different. They have this 50s or 60s idea of being involved in community centre, then it's because of their reputation or their standing in the community, and they see it as a way of they give some money out and help to run some community activities, rather than those management committee members in London. They are more geared up towards understanding their roles as trustees to a charity, and they are not necessarily funding those activities, but they give their time in managing to ensure that there is good governance of the organization. But in some areas, like in Manchester, in Portsmouth, in Swansea, and in Glasgow, and in Belfast, there are good voluntary community organizations in the Chinese communities there. I just happened to liaise with them, some of them, and learn that they got good funding support either from the lottery funding or from their council, and they were running good activities to meet the needs. So it really varies, but generally the governing body of those organizations or the management committee in London are more geared towards the proper role than outside.
Would you say in London it's a bit more professionalised, in the sense that outside of London it's more done on a more voluntary part-time basis?
Yeah, I think in London it's more professionalised, but outside London then it really varies. There are some good practices, but there are also some that really needs some more information and training and some changes.
And the forum would be there to support them. So you left the forum in 2003?
I left for the capacity building program for 1 year, I went to UEL. I think is it 2001 to 2002. And then after the study, which was full-time, then I went back to the forum, but in a different role. I mean, my full-time role would be as capacity building, and my role as chief executive was really very minimized. And then I literally left the Chinese in Britain Forum in, I think, 2003 for HAFCO, or 2004.
And how is the forum doing? How is the Chinese in Britain Forum doing today?
Last time I heard was a phone call from the new chief executive, or executive director, they called. I think it's Nikki. She phoned me up and said she was new there, and she just wanted to say hello. So I said hello. But I meant to pay them a visit, but I didn't really come around to doing that. So I'm sorry, but I haven't got updated information about the forum.
And just moving a little bit back to Haringey, what do you think the main challenges for Chinese people living in Haringey are at the moment?
I think the main challenge would be to keep up to date about new developments in terms of funding, projects, service provision, and ensure that the organizations are in good position to bid for those funding. And one of the new developments would be those funding is for contracts. So the Chinese community organizations in Haringey, as well as those outside, need to know how to make a good bid to really get the contract. And the contracts may now be involve partnership working. So the funders or the contract providers are looking at bulk contracting rather than do a small amount with each organization. They would like a joint up bid from partnership. Chinese organizations need to be able to involve in discussions with other interested organizations, and then take part in joint bid.
And do you think that the roles that you've occupied over the years with the community centre, with the Chinese school and HAFCO in the borough of Haringey have helped the Chinese community there?
I think with those years I really worked very hard, and I found myself being in a strategic position. I still had to really find my way through the new developments. So it's rather difficult to get on top of everything. I would like to think that I helped the Chinese community or other communities in Haringey through my work. But to be honest, I was a little disillusioned by the lack of rewards or lack of feeling of success or lack of feedback, to know that I'm making a big difference compared to what I'm doing now. I wasn't able to know whether I'm really doing my job right, helping those organizations, really being of help to them. But now when I work with individual, I know that I am doing a good job immediately. And that was one of the reasons why I left my role in HEFCO. I really would like to do something more rewarding. Yeah.
I'm just going to go on to talk a little bit about your personal experience then.
Okay.
So what you just said perhaps is one of them, but what are some of the other main challenges you faced whilst working with the Chinese community in Haringey?
I think the main challenges I faced were to bring everyone with me together, because being a voluntary organization, Chinese Community Centre is run by individuals, management committee. Some are more geared towards how to do it, but some may need some pushing or pulling. So the challenge is to really get everyone up their game, to be more knowledgeable about how to run it properly. And the second challenge was the ever-changing needs of the community, the composition of the Chinese residents in Haringey changing all the time. When I first started, they were mainly people who emigrated from Hong Kong or Southeast Asian countries, and they spoke mainly Cantonese. But when I was about to leave, then there were more and more Mandarin speakers and who were involved in some immigration tribunal cases. So their needs were more Mandarin speaking provision, and also some more legal advice. And I don't think the Chinese community has the proper support or resources to involve in legal advice. And other challenges are the changes in Immigration Act of the central government. Now the Chinese entrepreneurs or employers have more difficulty in getting a work permit because of the point system, and also you need to be of certain role before you can start applying for work permit. And even if you're employing chef or whatever, they've got to be able to speak English and pass the English test before they can get the work permit. So a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs find it very difficult to continue with the business, and Chinese organizations like the Haringey Chinese Community Organization are not allowed to provide legal advice with regard to immigration because of government regulation.
And what did you find to be the best thing about working with the community?
Well, I made a lot of friends, and some I'm still in contact with. and also was the beginning. It started from the beginning of my settling in the UK. So it's gave me a very good starting point of my settling in and career development in this country.
And you mentioned that you lived in Tottenham.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit? I mean, how did you find the area when you were living there?
Well, I rented a flat off Phillip Lane, and because renting in central London was very expensive, and but it was not a place I would think very positively, having lived in other areas as well, mainly because there wasn't a lot of facilities available around that area, and at that time I didn't really feel very safe going out and doing my things. But transport was quite convenient. Going down to Seven Sisters. Is it Seven Sisters? Yeah. And then could get into central London very easily. Yeah.
I also just wanted to ask a little bit. You've been in education a lot, and you seem to have done a lot of different research. Can you just summarise some of the main research that you've done?
My first research at the University College London was about cognitive psychology, understanding the short-term memory or working memory for Chinese characters. So it's very academic orientated, although originally when I came I wanted to do a research on dyslexia, reading difficulties involving Chinese script, but I changed my topic subsequently. The second research I did was at Greenwich, and it was a research to compare the identification or the relationship of Chinese pupils in the UK, how they are related to their parents, their Chinese parents, and compare that with those pupils in Hong Kong. So it's cultural comparison, cross-cultural comparison research.
And do you think that some of that research you've done has informed the work that you've done?
I think it gave me some understanding of the upbringing of Chinese, ethnic Chinese children or adolescents in this country, and it helped me to understand a bit more about the needs of the Chinese community in the country.
And where would you say that your attitude or ethics towards your work comes from?
I think coming from Hong Kong and then live in London, then the first thing was I was a bit shocked with the multicultural, multi-ethnic composition of the population in London. But my involvement at an early stage with the Chinese Community Centre in Haringey and in the Chinese school enabled me to really understand the importance of living in a multicultural society whilst we try to live side by side and adopt some of the other cultural practices from other ethnic groups, as well as the mainstream one. How to maintain our own identity as well. And I could see that it is very important that we feel confident and comfortable being a Chinese in a British society.
And is your job very busy, and the current job that you have? And how does your working life fit in with your personal one?
Well, at the moment, I'm working 35 hours a week in over 6 days. During those working hours, I would be isolated from anything else. But after work, I enjoy going to the gym. My gym is just down the road there, within 5 minutes walk. So I go there at least 5 times a week. And I enjoy singing, and sometimes I have some social gatherings, going to a Chinese restaurant to do karaoke, singing. Sometimes I was invited to perform in some community concerts. That gave me a lot of satisfaction. And other than that, then my social life is mainly Saturday. On the day I'm free, I go to Chinatown, have my dim sum, do some Chinese shopping, and then come back home. And I got to mention I like traveling a lot. So one of the reasons why I quite like this job is I can easily require or request for holidays, and I go abroad to Europe, to Asia, to America for my holidays, and I can take up no pay leave if I have already taken too many days off. And every time when I go away, I know that my role is covered by someone else, so it gives me freedom to think that I can go on holiday without worrying about work.
That's great. So that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Thanks very much for your time, then. It's been a pleasure.
I hope your research is successful.